Let me restart it. Uh, to start with, Unit 15, that is institutional setup for export promotion in India. So what are the contents? The contents are importance of institutional infrastructure, government policy making and consultations, then export promotion councils and commodity boards, technical and specialized services assistance, then commercial wing of Indian embassies abroad, government participation in foreign trade, and organizational setup in different states. So coming to the first introduction, since special knowledge and business expertise is required in export business, government has to provide guidance at different stages because exporters are not really expert in all these lines. There are different paraphernalias. So in order to fulfill that and with the aim of encouraging and promoting these exports, the government has to provide guidance and at different stages. Government of India have set up several institutions for this purpose. This unit endeavors to explain the role of these institutions, which will promote all these export wars. The first thing we'll discuss is importance of institutional infrastructure. Why at all there should be any institutional infrastructure? For international marketing efforts, an exporter needs special guidance and assistance. For strengthening export marketing effort and creating an export environment and export culture on a sustainable basis, Government of India has established a number of specialized institutions at production and industry level. There are 6 tiers. First one is the Department of Commerce of Government of India. It will prepare the India's trade policy. Government of India, the Ministry of Commerce is having one department, that is Department of Commerce. It is in charge of making this India's trade policy. Secondly, or the second tier is consultative organizations. So there are certain consultative organizations which you will read in detail later on. They are there to solve the export problems. And the third tier is commodity specific organizations. For each commodity, there is one specific organization. They are to deal with their respective commodities. Suppose for jute, there will be one, for cotton or textile, one, for medicines, one, like this. Then number 4, service institutions. They are in charge of assisting uh, exporters to expand their operations to reach out to world markets. And number 5 is government trading organizations like MMTC, etc. Their work is to export promotion and import management, to look after the export promotion and import management. And the last one, that is 6th one, is the agencies for export promotion at the state level. Because in the central level, whatever are there, if the state level they will not work and coordinate, then everything will be in vain. Sorry. The next thing or next step is government policy making and consultations. Only appropriate government policy can promote India's interest in international market. Department of Commerce under the Ministry of Commerce has been made responsible for the external trade of India. Its main functions are formulation of international commercial policy, negotiation of trade agreements, formulation of countries' export-import policy, and their implementation. A network of commercial sections in Indian embassies and high commissions in various countries is created for export-import trade flows to assist exporters in quick redressal of grievances An exporter's grievance redressal cell is set up. So these are all for the promotion. Then the Board of Trade. The Board of Trade is an important national platform for a regular dialogue between the government and the trade and industry. This board is set up by the government for a regular consultation, monitoring, and review of India's foreign trade policy and operations. Representatives from the Department of Commerce and other important ministries, then trade and industry associations, export service organizations are its members in order to manage this. This board takes corrective actions. Now we'll come to the Cabinet Committee on Exports. There is a Cabinet Committee on Exports. There are different organizations, as I have told you, there are different agencies. So now we'll see these things one by one. Coming to this Cabinet Committee, Cabinet Committee on Exports. With a view to ensure regular and effective monitoring of India's foreign trade performance and related policies, Cabinet Committee on Export has also been set up. Then the next organization is Empowered Committee of Secretaries. This Empowered Committee of Secretaries is meant for speedier and quicker decision making. An Empowered Committee of Securities has also been established to assist the Cabinet Committee on Exports. Then coming to grievances, that is grievances cell. Grievances cell has been set up to entertain and monitor disposal of grievances and suggestions received. It is a cell meant for speedy redressal of genuine grievances. So, because it is obvious that there will be some grievances from the exporters. So, they have got to be redressed and with swift arrangements. So, there is a grievance cell who will be in charge of this. Then we'll come to Director General of Foreign Trade, that is DGFT. DGFT is an important office of the Ministry of Commerce to help the formulation of India's export-import policy and implementation thereof. It has set up regional offices in almost all the states and union territories of India. These offices are known as regional licensing authorities. There is an export commissioner in the DGFT office who functions as a nodal point for all export promotion schemes. The regional licensing offices also act as export facilitation center. Facilitation centers. Okay. Then we'll come to Director General Commercial Intelligence and Statistics, that is DGCI and S. So here this organization, that is DGFT, is an important office. DGCI and S has been ensured with the task of compilation and publication of data on India's foreign trade. It brings out various types of publications relating to foreign trade of India. The major publications are Monthly Statistics of Foreign Trade of India, Monthly Press Note on Foreign Trade, Monthly Brochure of Foreign Trade Statistics of India, like this. There are many. Then we'll come to Ministry of Textiles. Ministry of Textiles is another ministry of Government of India which is responsible for policy formulation, development, regulation and export promotion of textile sector including sericulture, jute and handicrafts, etc. There are 4 advisor boards in this. They are All India Handloom Board, All India Handicrafts Board, All India Powerloom Board and Wool Development Board. So there are different types of boards to look after, like handloom, handicrafts, then your powerloom and wool, etc. Then there are different cells, I mean state cells. These state cells act as the nodal agency for interacting with the state government and union territories. Then we'll come to Development Commissioners, Small Scale Industries Organization. The Directorate has the headquarters in New Delhi and extension centers located in almost all states and union territories. They provide export promotion services almost at the doorstep of the small scale industries and cottage units. The important functions are to help the small scale industries to develop their export capabilities, to organize export training programs, to help such units to collect and disseminate information, to help such units in developing their export markets, to take up the problems and other issues related to small scale industries. So these are under the Development Commissioner Small Scale Industries Organization. Now we'll come to 15.4, that is Export Promotion Councils and Commodity Boards. So export promotion councils and commodity boards are the key institutions in the institutional framework established in India for export promotion. These are established for servicing export effort for specific products and or industrial sectors. Accordingly, because for each industry or for each product there will be separate organization. Accordingly, there are 20 export promotion councils and 7 commodity boards. They have been entrusted with the task of promoting exports of specific products from India. So, going to discuss the functions of the export promotion councils. One is marketing assistance. These are the broad functions. Marketing assistance, then continuous feedback of market information, then mouthpiece of industry, then product or industry coverage, then commodity boards are there, and lastly special authorities for some products. So the office of the Jute Commissioner and Jute Manufacture Development Council look after exports of natural fiber products, and Director of Banaspati looks after Banaspati. Like this, individual items, for individual items there will be different organizations. So these are in short the functions of the Export Promotion Council and Commodity Boards. Now we'll come to 15.5, that is Technical and Specialized Service Assistance. export marketing export marketing effort at the and individual corporate level also needs to be reinforced through a number of technical and specialized service inputs. These cover important and crucial areas like packaging, quality control, risk coverage, promotion, and finance. So these are the five important lines. One is packaging, quality control, risk coverage, promotion, and finance. Now let us discuss them in detail. The first one is these organizations are like this: Indian Institute of Packaging, that will look after the packaging itself. Then Export Inspection Council and agencies. Then you have got Export Inspection Council and agents. Then we'll be coming to Export Credit and Guarantee Corporation, then Exim Bank for long-term credit, like this. Then also we have got some other organizations are also there. So we have discussed about 2, 3, 4. Then this is 15.5.5, that is Indian Council for Arbitration. Then Federation of Indian Export Organization, or FIEO. Then the next one, I mean, 7th one is India Trade Promotion Organization, or ITPO. And the last one is Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. So these are the organizations which are technical and specific and responsible for specialized service inputs and exports. You can read them in detail. Yes, one more is also there, that is National Institute of Fashion Technology, that is NIFT. That is one more institution which is also involved in it. So now coming to 15.6, that is commercial wing of Indian embassies abroad. So we have got, India has got embassies in different countries. Just like they have got their embassies in India, we have also got embassies in different countries. So how they come to help? Actually, assistance in export marketing effort is also provided by the commercial wing of Indian embassies abroad. So there are some commercial wings in all these Indian embassies. Individual export unit as well as export promotion and service institutions can equally utilize the services of commercial wing of Indian embassies abroad for various purposes, such as specific market information, importers and or import agents, names and addresses, arranging meetings with prospective importers during the visit of foreign markets by Indian exporters. So all these things, for all these things, this commercial wing in different agencies will help you. Further specific information about various tenders as well as supply of tender documents and other project information, including market assessment, marketing practices, technical standards, and specification, etc., can also be attained through this channel. Advise the guidance regarding visits of trade delegations, trade fairs and exhibitions, development plans, market studies, etc., is also given by these offices on specific request of these exporters. Next point is government participation in foreign trade. Though export effort at the corporate level has been primarily in the private sector, government corporations have also been established to supplement the same. Besides playing a supplementary role in export promotion, the government corporations have also been functioning as major exporters of minerals and other canalized items of exports, besides developing India's exports to Eastern Europe. State Trading Corporation of India, as well as Minerals and Metals Trading Corporation of India, that is MMTC of India, have emerged as the largest trading houses in India's export sector. They have also provided the small and medium manufacturing manufacturers with an effective export outlet, this MMTC, etc. Over the recent past, they have also developed counter trading for augmenting India's exports, to increase India's exports. Other government corporations functioning in the export sector include the Spices Trading Corporation, Handloom and Handicrafts Export Corporation or HHEC, Metal Scrap Trading Corporation, Projects and Equipment Corporation of India Limited, Mica Trading Corporation of India Limited, Tea Trading Corporation of India Limited, and Cashew Corporation of India Limited. So these are the government corporations or companies which are also taking part in the export, and by the side by side they also promote the exports by helping the promoters. Now we'll come to 15.8, that is organizational setup in the states. The state governments are increasingly participating. What we have discussed till now is in the center level, all India level. But now coming to the states, what is their role? The state governments are increasingly participating in export efforts of the country. State governments have created independent Department of Commerce. Just like Government of India is having under the Ministry of Commerce one Department of Commerce, each state is also having their own Department of Commerce. Some government have also set up Export Promotion Board and export corporations for stimulating export business. Liaison officers have also been appointed by the states to develop export trade and maintain links with the central government departments and organizations. Export Promotion Advisory Committee have been established by some states under the chairmanship of the Chief Minister or the Industry Minister. So this is in the state level that they have done in order to promote these exports. So this is all regarding your unit 15, and if you have got any question now also you can ask me out of this unit. Otherwise we'll switch over to the next unit, that is unit 16, export assistance in India. So we should go to unit 16, that is export assistance in India. So this unit 16 deals with export assistance in India, and it will give us information regarding the importance of export assistance, then expansion of production base for exports, rendering exports price competitive, then strengthening export marketing effort. These are the 5 things which we'll discuss in this unit 16. So the objectives of this unit is to explain the importance of export assistance in India, to describe various assistance provided for the expansion of production base for export, Then explain the fiscal and financial assistance provided to the exporters. Then to describe the measures taken by the government of India to strengthen the export marketing effort. So these are the four objectives of this unit being read by us. Okay. Now, coming to the introduction, export business is instrumental in the economic development of the country. By this time, you all have understood how important is export for the country to have or to earn foreign exchange, again, which will help us for the balance of payment. In order to boost the export business, Government of India have provided various export assistances and facilities, both for production and marketing activities. In this unit, we learn various assistances provided by the Government of India to Indian exporters to promote the export business. And under this, the first thing is importance of export assistance. What is the importance of export assistance? That will read in 16.2. Export promotion was accorded a very low priority during the initial program of economic development in India. Basically, just after the independence, it was not given that importance. During the 1950s and almost up to mid 1960, that means for 15 years, export promotion was not at all considered as an essential element in India's economic development process. It was not given that importance. Easy and adequate availability of external assistance from World Bank and other international agencies as well as developed countries has provided India with more than adequate amount of foreign exchange for financing development as well as essential imports. Why this foreign exchange is required? In order to make the balance of payment, number one. Number two, to give us the requisite amount while we are going to import some capital goods or some goods which are not available in India like this. So adequate amount of foreign exchange was being availed from different organizations at the world level. Hence, the urgency of earning foreign exchange through expanding exports was not felt at that time. In addition, because of the large size of the domestic market in India, import substitution rather than the export promotion was considered as a more useful strategy for India's economic development process. Similarly, during the period of the first 3 5-year plans, that is 1950-51 to 65-66, Indian economy was in a formative stage. That means it has not achieved the peak. Consequently, India's capacity to export manufacturers or industrial products was extremely limited. Hence, on this account, as well, India could not look at international market, especially because of our extremely limited capacity to offer suppliers of industrial products. So this is the reason why it was not developed. However, after 1965-66, the aid flows to India were substantially reduced. Consequently, for the first time, India was made to depend significantly on her exports for acquiring foreign exchange to meet her needs of essential imports. Moreover, by the second half of 1960s, a number of industries, especially in the engineering, chemicals, leather, marine, and other sectors, have reached a stage from where they were looking for an opening in international market because they have started manufacturing these products and the surplus of the products could be sold outside India. Government of India had therefore considered it as appropriate to lay emphasis on the need for export promotion so as to enable the country to meet the need of imports. So these are the things which are very important for the development of all these institutions. Now we'll be coming to 16.3, that is expansion of production base for exports. Expansion of production base for exports. The first prerequisite of export promotion policy is to ensure larger exportable surpluses. If whatever you produce will be consumed in India itself, there will be no surplus to be exported. So we have to create more or manufacture more units so that the surplus things can be exported. So in other words, if a country wants to export more, it must have more to export. It will have more to export only if more and more is produced for export. Hence, it calls for increasing flow of production and investment resources into the export sector. This is very clear. Then we'll come to relaxation in industrial licensing policy, MRTP, FERA, foreign collaborations, etc. With a view to facilitate relatively easier expansion of production, creation or expansion of production capacities for increasing export potential of Indian economy, necessary relaxations have been provided for in the policies for industrial licensing. MRTP, that is Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act, and Foreign Exchange Regulations, etc. The Foreign Exchange Regulations Act has been liberalized, and Foreign Exchange Management, that is FEMA Act 1999, has been operationalized. The rupee has been made fully convertible for all approved external transactions. Fully convertible, this rupee. As a result, exporters of goods and services and those who are in receipt of remittances are able to sell their foreign exchange at market determined rates. The importers and foreign travelers are also able to buy foreign exchange at market determined rates. Exporters have also been allowed to maintain foreign currency accounts. So these are the benefits of these relaxations. Now we'll come to 16.3.2, that is liberal import of capital goods. So coming to this liberal import of capital goods, import policy of India has made specially liberal provisions for easy import of capital goods of all types. Previously it was not there, but subsequently the capital goods refers to those type of goods by using which you can produce again. Suppose a machinery which is badly necessary in order to manufacture some goods, but that machinery cannot be manufactured here in India. So we have to import it from other places, outside. So these type of imports, liberal import of capital goods was done. Then accordingly, imports of machinery and equipments are allowed without import license. Even you do not have any import license, you can import it. In addition, special provisions have been made for import of capital goods at a concessional rate of import duty. The amount of import duty will be reduced. Then export promotion capital goods, that is EPCG scheme, has been introduced for liberal import of capital goods. This export promotion capital goods scheme tells like this: new capital goods including computer software systems, may be imported under the Export Promotion Capital Goods Scheme. Under this provision, capital goods including these fixed dies, fixtures, these are the molds, etc. These are the hardwares. Up to 20% of the CI value of the capital goods may be imported at only 5% customs duty. So you can imagine what is the relaxation, to what extent relaxations are given. Then export processing zones, that is EPZ, EOU, SEZ, EHTP, STP. Let us discuss about that. So these export processing zones are EPZ, then export oriented units are EOU, then SEZ, that is special economic zones, then electronic hardware technology parks are ESTP, and software technology park units STP. How they help also in this export markets. Units undertaking to export their production of goods may be set up under export processing zones, export oriented unit scheme, special economic zone scheme, electronic hardware technology park scheme, or software technology park scheme. Such units may be engaged in manufacture, services, trading, development of software, agriculture including agro processing, aquaculture, animal husbandry, biotechnology, floriculture, horticulture, pisciculture, viticulture, poultry, sericulture, and granites may export all products except prohibited items of exports. So these type of industries came up and they have the surplus for exports. So they can export it easily, of course, without the prohibited items of exports. Now coming to these institutions or schemes we have just read about, is nothing but to facilitate with less of duty and taxes, etc. easily, so that they will be able to export more. These units import all types of goods without payment of duty, including capital goods for manufacture, production or processing, provided they are not prohibited items. Second-hand capital goods may also be imported in accordance with the provisions of the policy. Supplies from DTA to these units will be regarded as deemed exports. Foreign equity up to 100% is permissible to these units. These units shall be exempted from payment of corporate income tax for 10 years. So you can imagine what are the concessions, to what extent the concessions are being given under these market promotions, export market promotions. Then assured supply of raw material imports, that is 16.3.4. As regards making available the supplies of imported raw materials to the export sector, the import policy provides the scheme of duty exemption and duty remission. We'll read what is duty exemption and what is duty remission. The duty exemption scheme enables import of inputs required for export production. The duty remission scheme enables post-export replenishment or remission of duty. Remission means reducing that one on inputs used in the export product. So these are two important schemes given for encouraging these exports. Then we'll come to 16.3.5, that is eligibility for 16.3.5. Eligibility for export, trading, star trading, superstar trading houses. Export, trading, star trading, superstar trading houses have been accorded special status. Accordingly, they have been given different names. When exporters achieve the specified level of exports over a period, they may be recognized as export house or trading house or star trading house or super star trading houses. The more you export, the more will be the rank. Like first one is export house, second one is trading house, third one is star trading house, and the last one, the top one, was superstar trading house. Exports made both in free foreign exchange and in Indian rupee shall be taken into account for recognition. The objectives of this scheme is to recognize them as the respective houses with a view to building marketing infrastructure and expertise required for export promotion. The exporters registered with FIEO or EPC are eligible for this purpose. The export performance criteria may be based on either FOB value of exports or net foreign exchange earnings. Let us discuss them in detail. FOB criteria. What is this FOB criteria? The manufacturing or merchandising units who have achieved the following targets can be accorded the status of above mentioned export houses. Deemed exports are not counted for this purpose. Look at this 16.1 table. There you can see FOB criteria is given. Category of houses, that is export house, trading house, star trading house, and super trading houses. The average FOB value of exports during the preceding 3 licensing years in rupees. If it is 15 crores, then you can be export houses. If it is more than that but less than 75, you will be called only export house. But once you reach 75 crores, then it will be called trading house. And if it reaches 375 crores, it will be called star trading house. And if it reaches 1125 crores, it will be called super star trading houses. Then FOB value of eligible exports during preceding licensing year, only last year, it will be respectively 22 crores, 112 crores, 560 crores, and 1680 crores. FOB value of eligible exports. Then exporters have option to get recognition for 1 year only. In this case, relaxation in above turnover has been permitted to the exporters. The net foreign exchange earnings is also there. Exporters have an option for obtaining the status of export and other houses based on the following net foreign exchange earnings, that is in 16.2. Just like the 16.1, here also for export houses, it is the limit is FOB is 12 crores, and then for trading houses 62 crores. For becoming star trading house, it will be 312 crores, and superstar trading houses 937 crores. And similarly, net foreign exchange value of exports made during the preceding licensing years 18 crores, 90 crore, 450 crore, and 1350 crore respectively. So exporters have also an option to get recognition for 1 year, just like that one. And these different types are entitled to the following special benefits. One is import facilities, then marketing development assistance, foreign currency accounts, foreign exchange facilities, golden status certificate, other facilities are specified in the policy. So these are the advantages given to them. Now we'll come to 16.4, that is rendering export prices. There is another table also, that is 16.3.6. You can see export houses status for export of services. Those who were in respect of the goods, whereas this is in case of services. So this table also you can read. Now we'll be coming to 16.4, that is rendering export price competitive. The second prerequisite of export promotion policy is to render the export increasingly price competitive. Exports increasingly price competitive in international market. A number of price support measures in the form of fiscal as well as financial incentives. There are two sets of incentives. One is fiscal, another is financial incentive, which we will read in detail, have therefore been provided for the export sector in India. The need for price support measures in the form of export incentives arises on two accounts. First, price levels in international markets are invariably the lowest because of the high degree of competition there. On the other hand, Indian economy has over the years emerged as a high economy with low productivity. Hence, for successful and viable export effort, there is the need for incentives to provide the price support for rendering India's exports competitive and viable. Let me explain this one, this particular paragraph. You know, when we are going to export to a country, we are not the only country who is exporting. Suppose take the case of sugar. We are suppose interested to export sugar to a particular country. But suppose England. Now, England or UK is getting sugar also from different other countries like Ghana, etc. Suppose their cost of production is less so that they can sell it at a lower price. Say per kg in our Indian rupee terms, suppose 30 rupees. But here, as you know, nowadays we are getting it for 45 rupees a kg. So if we want to export that 45 rupees at 45 rupees, nobody will purchase. So what happens? We may sell it in the domestic market at 45 rupees, but from then we have to compete with other countries so that we'll try to make it at 30 rupees or less than 30 rupees. So even if we sell it for 30 rupees, with the other competitors, equal to the other competitors, then there is a loss of, suppose the cost of production was 40, we are selling it in the domestic market at 45 rupees at a profit of 5 rupees per kg. Now we have to sell it, or rather we are forced to export it at a cost of rupees 30 only. That means there is a loss of 10 rupees. Cost of production is 40 rupees, but we are exporting it at 30 rupees. So 10 rupees is the loss of the exporter. So the government comes forward with this price incentive that I will give you 10 rupees, don't worry. So in this way, the exports can be done. Secondly, incentives for exports also become necessary to neutralize the domestic market pull on Indian exporters. Hence, export incentives also aim at encouraging trade and industry in India to increasingly undertake export effort on a sustained basis. Sustained basis means we can thrive. The situation should not be that bad that we cannot thrive or we cannot produce. Under the export promotion policy of India, various types of incentives have been provided for as price support measures. These include fiscal incentives and financial incentives. Now coming to fiscal incentives, there for export promotion, these fiscal incentives for export promotion include duty drawback. We have already read what is duty drawback, and then central excise rebate, and third one is income tax exemption on export profits. So coming to the duty drawbacks, although we have read it, let me just remind one or two sentences out of it. In the manufacturing of many export products, imported or indigenous, raw materials and components are used on which customs or central excise duty has been paid. When the finished products are exported in which duty paid inputs are used, a part of whole of the amount of such duty is allowed to be drawn back by the exporter, or it is refunded to him. So that is called duty drawback. So when it is refunded, he gets some sort of relief. This is one type of incentive. Then coming to central excise rebate. Under this scheme, the central excise duties on the inputs and final product or on the output proposed for export are refunded to the exporter. So the central excise which has been levied, that will be again refunded to him. It helps in further reduction in the overall cost of production for exports. When this will be reduced, this is one element of the cost of production. So the cost of production also reduces due to this central excise rebate. Then we'll come to income tax exemption. In order to promote exports, income tax exemption has been granted under Income Tax Act. So if on the profit, income tax is on the profit only. So if the profit is to be taxed, then also there is another hardship on the part of the exporter. So the government of India has given some concessions here also by exempting income tax on these profits to some extent, if not all. Then part of the profit derived from export of specified goods or merchandise is deducted for the computation of income tax. You will get deduction for this. Then some specified amounts of profits of companies engaged in the business of hotel or of a tour operator or a travel agent is deducted. So these are the different items are there, how income taxes are exempted on some items. So this you can read. Then we'll come to sales tax exemption. Sales tax is another type of tax that is on the sales. There is no tax on sales made for export purposes. If you sell it in the open market, that is your domestic market, you will have to give tax. But if you export it, the same goods, when you export it, there will be no tax, no sales tax. The exporter need not pay sales tax either on the goods purchased from manufacturers or traders. Now we'll come to the financial incentives. These are the fiscal incentives. Government takes it in its budget itself. These are all spelled out. Now coming to the financial incentives, how the banks and other institutions can help. The major scheme of financial incentives include interest subsidy, financial assistance scheme for agricultural, horticultural, and meat exports. Then this includes your interest subsidy, that is export sector in India has also been given interest subsidy under which the working capital is made available by the banks to the export sector at a concessional or subsidized rates of interest. Now what is concessional? If the bank rate of interest is suppose 8%, when you will go for these exports and you need some working capital, suppose you will be getting at 5%, that means 3% concession is given. So far the interest is concerned. And what is subsidized? If it is 8% usual, you will give 8%, but you will get suppose 2% or 3% or 4% subsidy from the government. So far as the interest on this raw material, on this working capital is concerned. Under this scheme, working capital required for pre-shipment credit as well as post-shipment credit is provided to the export sector at concessional rate of interest. This measure helps Indian exporters to reduce the working capital cost of export operation. Then the second item in this case, that is financial incentives, is financial assistance scheme for agricultural, horticultural, and meat exports. For these three specific items, when you are going to export, in order to promote the exports of agricultural, horticultural, and meat products, Agricultural and Processed Food Products Export Development Authority, there is one organization called APEDA. They provide financial assistance for the following purposes. What are the purposes? Feasibility studies, surveys, consultancy and database upgradation, development of infrastructure, export promotion and market development, packaging development, quality control, upgradation of meat plants, then organization building and human resource development, air freight assistance for export of horticultural products, export by air, then generation of relevant research and development through research institutions. So these are the concessions rather you can get, that is under the financial schemes. Next point will be strengthening export marketing export effort. Strengthening export marketing effort. How will strengthen our marketing effort? So here, the third prerequisite of export promotion is the marketing effort. It may be noted that export is primarily a sale transaction. Production can be converted into sale only through the marketing effort. First of all, you have to try to sell it. So that is marketing effort. And all the activities involved in that is included in the marketing effort. In other words, marketing effort provides the necessary link or channel between production and sales. Hence, success on the export front is dependent upon the marketing effort. Export promotion policy in India, therefore, pays special attention to the need for improving and strengthening export marketing effort. With this objective, the Government of India have established a very comprehensive network of institutions for servicing the export sector. In other words, an effort has been made to provide the necessary infrastructure for servicing the export sector, particularly to improve the export marketing effort. With this objective in view, Government of India have established a number of specialized institutions for providing necessary services and assistance to individual corporate units from the export sector. So it is the initiative of the government in order to increase or to give assistance, help, provide necessary services for the purpose of marketing, increasing, developing marketing effort. Then institutions established for strengthening export marketing effort includes Export Promotion Council, commodity boards, like tea boards, coffee boards, etc., jute boards, special authorities and industry associations. These are the key institutions servicing export effort at individual corporate level product-wise. The primary function of these institutions is to provide the exporter with export marketing guidance and advice, as well as complete information and details covering almost all the critical elements involved in export marketing effort at the individual corporate unit level on a continuous basis. So this is regarding your strengthening export marketing effort. Then we'll come to, under this only, this market development assistance. What is this market development assistance? This assistance is provided for overall development of overseas markets. It is provided for sponsoring, inviting trade delegations within and outside the country, market studies, publicity, setting up of warehouses or showrooms, research and development, quality control, etc. MDA or market development assistance is largely available to approved organizations like export houses, consortia of small scale industries. Consortia means a group of that small scale industries. Then individual exporters or other sponsored persons. The assistance is given for airfare, daily allowance, participation in fairs and exhibitions and in symposiums, etc. The assistance is disbursed by the FIEO and Ministry of Commerce. Then external marketing assistance scheme for jute, especially for jute, there is one external marketing assistance scheme. The external marketing assistance scheme provides grant of market assistance at the rate of 5% and 10% of FOB value realization and export of specified diversified products. The benefit is available to both manufacturers and exporters and merchant exporters. Those who are manufacturing and exporting, they will be getting this benefit, as well as the merchants who do not grow jute, but they collect it and sell it and export it. They are also getting this advantage. So this is all regarding your unit 16, that is to say export assistance in India. If there are any questions, you can ask me now, or even at the end of the last unit, that is unit 17. Unit 17 deals with the procedures for claiming export incentives. These incentives are to be claimed from the government of India in different procedures. So what should we read? Need for procedural formalities, then duty drawback scheme again, then refund of central excise, duty exemption remission scheme, and tax exemption, etc. These are the 6 things which we will read. So coming to objectives of this unit, after studying this unit, you should be able to explain the need for procedural formalities of export incentives. What are the need of these procedural formalities in order to claim your export incentives? Secondly, to describe the process of claiming duty drawback, that there is a particular process in which you have to move. Then third one is to explain the methods of claiming excise incentives under various schemes of central excise rules, and to describe various facilities of duty exemption scheme, and to describe the procedure of exemption under income tax and sales tax. Coming to the introduction, various incentives are instrumental for export promotion. So this gives us certain motivation on the part of the exporters. Exporters have to comply various formalities for full realization of these incentives. Not that easily they will get it. There are certain formalities they have to fulfill, and then only they will get back their these incentives they will get. In this, we will study procedure for claiming incentives and know the facilities, namely duty exemption and tax exemption. So coming to the need for procedural formalities. Procedural formalities prescribed for claiming various export incentives need timely and proper compliance on the part of exporters. Let me explain what is this timely. Timely means if within 1 month you have to apply within that 1 month. If 1 month is elapsed, there is no possibility that you will get the incentives. Then this alone will ensure fuller realization, the total realization of export incentives on a regular basis. Delays and costs in the realization of export incentives will offset the fund flow position of the export firm on one hand, and will render the export effort unremunerative on the other. If in time we are not applying for this, then we will not get it. If we do not get it, our cash flow is hampered. That means we are devoid of some cash. So in order to, and naturally that will be a demotivating factor. So, and also on remunerative. Unremunerative means we are not getting reward for our exports. It is therefore essential for the exporters to develop a complete understanding about the procedural and documentary formalities for timely preparation and submission of claims of export incentives to the appropriate authorities on a regular basis. One after another the exports are there, so one after another also will go for the incentives. It may be desirable to prepare an action plan by the export department of the firm for filing claims of export incentives to different authorities on a planned basis. So because it becomes a routine affair with the exporter or export houses who export one after another item like this. So they have a particular department who will look after these filing claims of export incentives to different authorities. And there should be a plan of action for this. After this, what we will do, then what will be done, like this. Unfortunately, exporters in India are required to approach a number of authorities for realization of export incentives against each export transaction. Not one single door business is there. You have to go from place to place, from officer to officer for fulfilling these procedures or these formalities. The task of the exporters has been rendered further difficult and complicated because of the fact that each incentive disbursement authority has prescribed its own exclusive procedure and documented requirements for processing claims of export incentives. Each one is having their own procedures. Thus, besides multiplicity of authorities to be approached for realizing claims, not one, a number of them. Claims of export incentives, exporters are also required to follow different procedural and documentary formalities in each case. Not that only in one document everybody will give his signature, not like that. They have got different formats. Again, you have to fill up and they will put their signature if satisfied. Then you have to fill another type of form to to submit it to another official, and then again he will be satisfied, he will move on. Like this it will go on. So it is a difficulty on the part of the exporters. So all these things need for a total plan of action from factory to realization of incentive against each export transaction. Now we'll come to duty drawback scheme. That is in 17.3, duty drawback scheme. Customs duties and central excise duties on raw materials, components, and packing materials used in export products are refunded on post-export basis, subject to some limitations where duty drawback is not refunded. Regarding this duty drawback, again we have discussed this thing. Duty drawback system, I told you once, I remember that it is very important because 3 to 4 times we have read regarding this. What is duty drawback? You should understand. Okay. Now, customs duties and central excise duties on raw materials which are used for, or the components and packing materials which are used for export products, that is to be refunded on post-export basis. That means after your export is over, you can claim the duty drawback. Means you will get the refund. Subject to some limitations. Not that all these things which you have paid will be refunded to you. Some are there which cannot be refunded. Then, so far as this duty drawback system is concerned, there are two types of drawback rates. Coming to these drawback rates, two types of drawback rates are available there. All industry rates, these are published in the form of notification by the government every year and are normally valid for 1 year. And another is brand rates or special brand rates. These are fixed on the individual request of an exporter manufacturer. This is not given in advance. This has to be fixed after the bargain with the exporter or the manufacturer. Besides that, product-wise drawback rates are also applicable. For each product or for different products, different rates will be applicable. Now we'll come to 17.3.2, that is procedure for claiming duty drawback. So these are, we know what is duty drawback. Then we came to know that there are two types of duty drawbacks. Then we came to know that there are different rates also. So after that, we'll come to procedure for claiming duty drawback. The claim of duty drawback, that is DBK, duty drawback, is processed and passed for payment primarily on the basis of the relevant information given in the drawback copy of shipping bill. The shipping bill accompanies this thing, drawback copy. So there is a drawback copy. There are 3-4 copies of the shipping bill. One is drawback copy. So the exporters are required to file the drawback copy of shipping bill in triplicate. In quadruplicate, if any export assistance is applicable. Otherwise, in triplicate. Well in advance in the export, this has to be filled up in advance, well in advance, in the export department or central registration unit at the port or ICD container freight station, air cargo complex, etc. The DBK shipping bill must indicate the DBK schedule number of the export product, product exhibition, DBK rate, and total amount of drawback claim. So these are the details about the procedure for claiming duty drawback. Then the shipping bills and other documents are scrutinized and examined by the concerned customs officer. Then only, if they are satisfied, this duty drawback is payable to you. Then what are the documents? There are 10 documents for this purpose. The claim for duty drawback is filed along with the following 10 documents. What are the documents? Number 1, copy of export contract or letter of credit, as the case may be. Number 2, copy of packing list. Number 3, copy of AR4 form wherever applicable. Number 4, insurance certificate wherever necessary. And then number 5 is copy of communication regarding rate of drawback if applicable. Then number 6, copy of test report if required. Number 7, if required, declarations. Then number 8, declaration regarding not availing mode VAT. And number 9, certificate from the jurisdictional excise superintendent if applicable. And number 10, if the officer asks for anything else in particular, that you have to give. Where an exporter desires that he may be granted the incentives of drawback provisionally, he may, after making the application, apply in writing to the drawback directorate. That means in advance, he has to be, if he wants to receive some duty drawback, then he has to write to the drawback directorate. Then we come to 17.4, that is refund of central excise. This is all regarding your duty drawback. Then we'll come to refund of central excise. Central excise is another type of duty or tax, you can say, which the exporter must have given. How? In some cases, there are the procedures how we can get back or we can get refunded of these central excises or a part of it at least. The refund of central excise is an important fiscal incentive for export promotion. As you know, exporters should not bear the burden of indirect taxes. Hence, exportable goods are either exempted from such taxes or these taxes are refunded if exemption is not possible. In India, excisable goods are free from the incidence of excise duty levied by the central government, both on finished product and raw materials. The scheme is governed by the section 37 of the Central Excise and Salt Act 1944 as amended from time to time. It has been amended on September 22nd, 1995. In lieu of the Rule 12, 12A and 191A of the Central Excise Rules, only one Rule 12 operates for exports under claim for rebate of duty. This has been consolidated in one rule, that is Rule 12. In another place also we have mentioned this. The rebate is granted on the duty levied at finished product and on inputs for this finished product. Rule 13, 191B and 191BB of Central Excise Rules have been integrated into Rule 13. Only one rule is there after integration. This rule is applicable for exports of goods in bond and utilization of non-duty paid raw materials for manufacture and export of excisable goods. Then we'll come to the documents. The major excise documents are invoices, AR4, AR5 forms as the case may be, then form C, all these three things are necessary. Then coming to export under claim of rebate under Rule 12(1)(a). Under the Central Excise Rule 12(1)(a), rebate of duty paid on export of duty paid goods shall be granted. So, under this Central Excise Rule, rebate will be granted. Rebate of duty will be granted. The rule permits to grant rebate on all excisable goods except mineral oil and goods supplied as ship stores. On that, there is no rebate. The facility is available on export of goods to all countries other than Nepal and Bhutan. So one who was asking about Nepal and Bhutan, this restriction is also there. So anything which is exported to Nepal and Bhutan, this type of rebate is not applicable. Let us discuss the procedure in detail. Removal of goods without examination. These are the things you have to read. Then, sorry, exports under Central Excise seal after examination, then submission of forms at the customs offices, then filing claim for rebate. And what are the documents required? Following documents are required to be filed for claiming rebate. First one is application in prescribed form, then original copy of AR4 form, duplicate copy of AR4 form in seal cover received from customs officer if required, then duly attested copy of bill of lading, duly attested copy of shipping bill, export promotion copy, disclaimer certificate in case claimant is other than exporter. Now we'll come to 17.4.2, that is export under claim for rebate of duty on excisable materials used in the manufacture of export goods. That is Rule 12(1)(b). 12(1)(a) we have discussed. This is 12(1)(b). Under this Central Excise Rule 12(1)(b), rebate has been granted on the duty paid on raw materials or inputs used in the manufacture of the finished goods exported from India except to Nepal or Bhutan again. Rebate may be granted on any excisable materials used in the manufacture and packing of the goods exported. Just like raw materials, it has been used. The rebate of input the rebate of input stage may be claimed on the export of all finished goods, whether excisable or not. In order to claim this rebate on the input stage, the export must be in the name of the exporter. The rebate may be granted on the duty paid on raw materials, consumables, components, semi-finished goods, assemblies, sub-assemblies, intermediate goods, accessories, parts and packing materials required for manufacture of export goods, etc. The rebate on input stage cannot be claimed under certain circumstances. What are they? They are three in number. One is the finished goods are exported under claim for duty drawback. So if duty drawback is allowed, this will not be allowed. The finished goods are exported in discharge of export obligation under a value-based advance license or a quantity-based advance license issued before 31st March 1995. And if the facility of input stage credit is valid under MODVAT provisions under Chapter BAA of Central Excise Rule 1944. If you have availed it there, here also again you cannot avail it. Then coming to claiming of rebate. Procedure format to claim the also there are some these three cases I have already read where rebate cannot be claimed. Then also there are some procedural formalities to claim the rebate. So coming to this claiming of rebate, the application for rebate is made to the jurisdictional assistant collector of Central Excise. Where exports are under claim for rebate under Rule 12(1)(a), the same should be claimed in the combined application for rebate. This is 1(b), and in 1(a) also if you are getting, then it can be combiningly made. Then what are the documents required? Following documents should be submitted for filing claims. First one is original copy of AR5, then duty attested copy of shipping bill, export promotion copy, then duly attested copy of bill of lading or airway bill. In case of ship, it is bill of lading, and duplicate copy of Central Excise invoice where rebate under Rule 12(1)(a) is also being claimed. This will be required. Then duplicate copy of the AR5 from received from the customs officer in a sealed cover if obtained. If the assistant collector is satisfied, he will sanction the rebate. So with these documents you have to apply, and if the assistant collector is satisfied, he will sanction the rebate. Now we'll come to export of goods under bond under Rule 13. The exporters have been permitted to export the excisable goods without the payment of Central Excise duty. Exporters are required to execute a bond with the Central Excise Authority equivalent to the amount of excise duty on the basis of their estimate. All the excisable items and the raw materials required for their production are covered under this scheme. So there are also provisions for export under bond on a regular basis. This is covered under Rule 14. For this purpose, a running bond account is maintained. In this case, the amount of bond is determined on the basis of the excise duty involved in export transaction over a period of time, generally regarded as transit period. So these are the formalities which you have to read all these things, 17.4.3. Then there you will get some other important points also, that is the procedure, that is packages in which goods to be exported or packed shall be legibly marked in ink or oil color or in such other durable manner as the Commissioner of Central Excise may allow. Exporters shall prepare invoices, that is AR4, AR5 forms, and execute the relevant bond for this removal. For this purpose. Now we'll come to removal of goods without the examination of Central Excise Authority. Exporters are allowed to remove the goods without the examination of Central Excise authorities. I think we have covered these documents. Export of goods under bond under Rule 13 we are dealing. Then removal of goods after the examination of Central Excise Authority. That is one more point. In this case, the exporter shall submit AR4 or AR5 forms in 6 duplicates, that means 6 copies, to the jurisdictional superintendent of Central Excise. Exporters are required to submit the application form 24 hours before the removal of goods. The excise authority shall examine the goods and relevant information. He may draw the samples in triplicate wherever necessary. 2 sets of sealed sample will be returned to the exporter for delivering to the customs officer at the point of export. The 3rd set will be retained for his record. If the excise officer is satisfied, he would allow the clearance of goods. He shall return original and duplicate copies of AR4 and AR5 forms to the exporter for presenting to the customs officer at the point of export. The 6 duplicate copies shall be given to the exporter in a seal cover for handing over to the customs officer. So there are certain you can say confidential things which will have to be given in a covered copy. Quadruplicate copy will be sent to the chief accounts officer at the headquarters, and quintuplicate copy, that means 5th copy, shall be retained for records. So these are the formalities. In 6 copies it will have to be prepared and it will be given to different personalities. Then what are the documents required? The following documents shall be filed by the exporter as a proof of export of goods. First one is original copy of AR4, AR5 forms, duplicate copy of AR4 or AR5 forms in a seal cover received from customs officer. Number 3 is duly attested copy of bill of lading. Number 4, duly attested copy of shipping bill, that is export promotion copy. So this way, this documents will have to be given. 4 documents will have to be given. Now we'll come to 17.5, that is duty exemption or remission scheme. Registered exporters are eligible for the facility of duty-free import of raw materials, components, packing materials, etc. Only registered exporters. They are required for manufacture of the product for executing export orders. Duty exemption scheme enables import of inputs required for export production. Duty remission scheme enables post-export replenishment or remission of duty or reimbursement of duty rather on inputs used in the export product. Now let us discuss it in detail. First of all, duty exemption scheme, that is in 17.5.1 you can read this one, duty exemption scheme. An advance license is issued under duty exemption scheme to allow import of inputs which are physically incorporated in the export product. Now, what is an advance license? An advance license is issued for duty-free import of inputs subject to actual user condition according to the EXIM policy. EXIM means export and import. Such licenses other than the advance license for deemed export are exempted from payment of basic customs duty, surcharge, additional customs duty, anti-dumping duty, and safeguard duty, if any. Advance license can be issued for physical exports, intermediate supply, and deemed exports. Then we'll come to advance license for intermediate supply. Advance license may be issued for intermediate supply to a manufacturer exporter for the import of inputs required in the manufacture of goods to be supplied to the ultimate exporter, deemed exporter, holding another advance license. And the last point is advance license for deemed export. Actual export is different, deemed export. Advance license can be issued for deemed export to the main contractor for import of inputs required in the manufacture of goods to be supplied to the categories mentioned in the policy. An advance license for deemed export can also be availed by the subcontractor of the main contractor to such project. The licenses shall be exempted from basic customs duty, surcharge, and additional customs duty only. Now we'll come to duty remission scheme, that is in 17.5.2. Duty remission scheme consists of duty-free replenishment, that means replacement certificate, and duty entitlement passbook scheme. So duty remission scheme consists of duty-free replenishment certificate and duty entitlement passbook scheme. The scheme allows drawback of import charges on inputs used in the export product. So this will involve duty-free replenishment certificate, DFRC, as we have discussed, and also there are many points which you can go through under this. That is your jobbing, repairing, etc. for the export. These are individual items of work. Export obligation, then advance release orders, back-to-back inland letter of credit, prohibited items are there. There are some prohibited items which cannot be imported. Then compliance with export policy. According to the export policy, if the export policy allows it, only you can import, otherwise not. Then re-import of exported goods under advance license. That means which has been exported, again you have to re-import it. Then admissibility of drawback. In case of advance license, the drawback shall be available in respect of any of the duty paid materials, whether imported or indigenous, used in the goods exported. Now we'll come to know what is value addition. Value addition, I think I have already explained in some other unit. So the following formula is used for value addition. How much value has been added, how to calculate it, because on that you will be getting your remissions. So value addition is equal to A minus B divided by B into 100. So A stands for FOB value, free on board value of the export realized, or FOR, free on rail value of supply received. Then B stands for CIF value, cost insurance freight value of the imported inputs covered by the license plus any other imported materials used on which the benefit of duty drawback is being claimed. Then it will be multiplied by, so the formula is like this. A minus B divided by B into 100. So it is the percentage wise calculation of the quotient of the difference between A and B to B. All right. Those who are good in mathematics, it is not a very difficult task for them. Now we'll come to tax exemption. There are two types of tax exemptions. One is income tax exemption, another is sales tax exemption. So in order to promote export, various taxes and duties have been exempted. First one is income tax exemption. As a measure of export promotion, various tax incentives are granted under the Income Tax Act. The major incentives are the part of the profit derived from export of specific goods, not all the goods, but specific goods or merchandise of exporters and or the supporting manufacturers is deducted from the total profit. So the part of the profit on those items will be deducted from the total profit for calculation of income tax. Then secondly, a specified amount of profits of companies engaged in the business of hotel or of a tour operator or a travel agent is deducted from the total profit. Because this is essential, they have to come and we have to go there, and in the hotels you have to stay. So whatever those expenses are there, that is to be deducted from the profit. There is a provision for the tax relief on export of computer software and for the import of system. So when you are purchasing the hardware, there is also some relaxation of taxes, and when you are exporting your computer software, there you will be getting some relaxation. Then the profits from export of transfer of film, VT software, TV news software, telecast rights are partially deducted, not totally but partially deducted. There is a provision of tax relief to an Indian company or resident taxpayer by giving a specified deduction of 50% of the profits from project exports in computing the taxable income. Then there is provision for tax exemption of plantation subsidy. Rebate on royalties, commissions, dividends, etc. from certain foreign enterprises are also granted. Then tax relief is provided on remuneration received from abroad by teachers, professors, etc. So we, the professors and teachers, need not give tax on those remunerations. Tax relief is provided to playwrights, artists, sportsmen, etc. So this is to encourage them. Then tax rebate is given on remuneration received on services rendered outside India. There is a provision. If in India it is there, it will be taxable. But outside, if you are providing some services, that will not be taxable. That remuneration will not be taxable. There is a provision for deduction of the profit from business of export of transfer of film software, television software, etc. Then sales tax exemption. So this is the last thing we have to discuss, that is sales tax exemption. Purchase of goods meant for export are exempted from sales tax. If it is purchased and sold here, that means trading inside India, then you have to give sales tax. But if it is meant for exports, you will be divided up, or you will be given a concession of the sales tax. Then however, the purchaser of goods has to be a registered dealer for the class of goods meant for exports. Everybody will not be entitled to this. You and me cannot avail this, but only if you have registered. If the purchaser of goods has got to be, he is a registered dealer, then only he will get it. He is allowed to furnish a satisfactory proof of export of goods to the seller of goods. Along with Form H, proof of export can be in the form of export invoice and bill of lading. non-negotiable copy, or airways bill, or postal receipt, etc. So these work as the proofs. The seller will then submit the proof of export along with Form H to the sales tax authority. So because the seller is not taking sales tax from you, he is liable to show why he has not deducted, or why he has not levied, why he has not collected sales tax. So to the sales tax authorities, he can show all these proofs, the records or the attested copies, etc. are there. He can give it as a proof to the sales tax authorities. The exporter has to fill in Form H in triplicate and issue original and duplicate copies to the supplier and retain the triplicate copy for his own record. The supplier submits original of Form H and proof of export to the sales tax authority. Thus, for availing the benefit of sales tax exemption, the exporter should first get the items concerned covered under his local sales tax registration certificate and apply for insurance of Form H, because all will not get it, only registered dealers will get this Form H. The exporter should, and without Form H you cannot avail this sales tax exemption. The exporter should enclose the following documents for issuance of Form H. So what are the documents? Copy of shipping bill duly certified by the customs authority, copy of invoice duly certified, copy of letter of credit, and copy of confirmed export order. So all these are the proofs, so that by getting this, the proper authorities can issue you Form H. That the sales tax authorities will issue you Form H, by showing which you can apply for the exemption of sales tax. So students, this is all about your unit 17. And here we conclude the whole of IBO 04. So if there is any question, you can ask me, and I shall try to remove your doubts as far as practicable. Any question?
No, sir.
Okay, then you can read. All the best. Whenever the exam will be there, if it is not today, if it will be tomorrow, some days it will be there. So be prepared for that. Go through this. I hope you have already got an idea about all these things. Then one more time reading means you can understand it quite well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Patel.
Yes, sir.
It is finished. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come across with the students, and I hope I have done my duty successfully, and as the reaction of the students, it is quite good. So they are confident of getting themselves prepared now by virtue of all these things. Thank you.
On behalf of IGNOU Regional Center also, I extend my thanks to you, sir, for taking the 4 classes.
Thank you very much.
And we will be looking forward to you taking more classes in future.
Definitely, because I am a retired person, I have got the time and I have got the enthusiasm till now, because I am giving these visiting lectures in different universities also. So I'm in touch with all these things. Thank you. Whenever there will be any, actually my field is accounting. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
My field is accounting and cost accounting, management accounting, this corporate accounting, and even I have got prepared what do you call it, notes and all these things. Not only notes, that lectures are also there. I have got 80 lectures on this accountancy that is already recorded.
Okay, great, sir.
So that can be also of some use to the students. Directly, I can give it to you, and you can give it to them. So
Okay.
we can
Thanks
be
a lot,
in
sir.
touch. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
And learners, from tomorrow, your class has been scheduled to 10 a.m. Your next paper will be IVO 5, so that will be taken at 10 a.m. So don't forget to join at 10 a.m. Thanks a lot. Thank you, sir. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.